Hi there. I really want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to watch this presentation on building and preserving your wealth. My name is Jim Kipp. I'm a financial strategist. For over 38 years, I've been educating people on how to grow and protect their wealth so that they'll be able to keep more of what they've invested and will ultimately be able to keep Uncle Sam out of their pocket when they retire. Unfortunately, our country is headed in a direction that could drastically affect your savings and investments if you are not paying attention. The old way of planning for retirement is not effective anymore. It may be time for you to be open to learning the wealth building practices of the top 25%. But before we get started, let me give you a little background on me and my company. As I mentioned, my name is Jim Kipp. I've been in business for almost 39 years ago now. And my wife and I, this is my wife Pam and I in Hawaii a couple of years ago. We're originally from Wisconsin and moved to Florida about 10 years ago. And we've been in Palm Coast, Florida about 8 years now. So we definitely enjoy the weather here compared to the frozen tundra in Wisconsin. Now, most of my clients are in Wisconsin and Florida, but I do business all over the country virtually. I've got a license in about 30 states. This is my back office. They're located in San Diego, and they help me with a number of different things, including market research, preparing reports for me, doing annual review statements for my clients, and a lot of other things that they help me with. Here's the disclosures. This presentation is designed to provide general information on the subject covered. It is not intended to provide specific legal or tax advice and cannot be used to avoid penalties or to promote, market, or recommend any tax plan or arrangement. You are encouraged to consult your own personal tax advisor or attorney and to do your own research and due diligence. The sources used to prepare this material are believed to be true, accurate, and reliable and are not guaranteed. Now, when you're looking at financial planning, there's 6 things to consider. Longevity is the first one. You want to make sure that your plan is set up so that when you do retire, you're not going to run out of money before you run out of life. And the next one is liquidity. It's very important that you have assets that are liquid, or in other words, it's money that you can get at in case you have emergencies, and in a place where you don't have to pay penalties to get the money out. Inflation is a big problem today. You want to make sure that your investments are staying ahead of inflation. And when you retire, you want to make sure that that retirement income is growing every year and that it's staying ahead of inflation for the rest of your life. The market, you want to try to avoid stock market losses as best as possible. It doesn't do you any good to have to go 2 steps forward and 3 steps back all the way to retirement, and then all of a sudden you don't have enough money to retire on. Mortality is a big issue. You should have that incorporated into your plan, because while you're working, you want to make sure that if you died prematurely, your lost income now will be replaced for your family. And taxes are becoming a problem these days. In the near future, it's going to be a big deal. You want to make sure that you want to mitigate taxes as much as possible, especially when you're getting close to retirement, because when you retire and all of a sudden you calculate a retirement income, and all of a sudden you have to take 30, 40, or 50% out of your retirement income to pay for taxes, that's going to be a big problem for your retirement. So those are the 6 considerations of financial planning. Well, what about stock market losses? Here's a little history here of the stock market losses. 1987, That was 2 years after I started my practice. I remember it well. It was called Black Monday on October 19th, 1987. The market crashed 49%. And the reason for that at that time was Wall Street, they started computerized trading where the computers now were buying and selling automatically, but they didn't account for the problem that when the market would start crashing, that the computer would stop, and it didn't. It just kept going down and down and down. So in 1987, there was a 49% loss that year. In the year 2000 was the dot-com bubble burst. That was the tech stock crash. The NASDAQ went down 51%. And 2008 and 2009 was the housing market and financial institution collapse. And that's probably the one that most of you recall more than others right now. And the S&P 500 went down 50%. In 2020, as you all remember, we had COVID-19. The pandemic was a major problem for a lot of reasons. And in March of 2020, the market went down 28%. So it can go down really fast, and it can go down quite a ways. In 2023, we're almost at the end of 2023. The government is printing $120 billion a month to prop up the stock market and to satisfy Congress's taste for spending. And so we're getting to the point now where who knows what could happen. We could have a major stock market loss in 2023, or it could happen in 2024. Now, what if you had $100,000 invested in the market, whether it's mutual funds or a brokerage account, and the market went down 30%? How much does the market have to come back for you just to get back to even? Is it 30%? Well, if you guess 30%, you'd be wrong. It's actually 43%. See, your $100,000 went down now to $70,000. So this $70,000 has to work harder. It has to earn 43% just for you to break even. And that could be a problem, because if you're getting close to retirement, it could take literally years for the market to come back 43%. Now, we like to use a strategy called indexing to mitigate stock market losses. And it works like this. The red line is the stock market, the S&P 500. And this goes from the year 2000 to the year 2022. And you can see the market went down 3 years in a row. And then it went back up, recovered a little bit. Then it went down. Then it came back over 6 years. And then the market went down, and then it went up, and then COVID hit, and then it went down. So it's literally like a roller coaster ride when you're in the market, okay? And so what we like to use is the indexing strategy, and that's the green line. And it works like this. When the market goes down, the green line stays flat. So the red line went down 3 years in a row. The green line stayed flat for 3 years. Then the market came back. So the green line followed the index and came back. And then it went down. So it stayed flat right here. And then the market came up again. And then it went down. So the green line stayed flat. And then the market went up again. And then it went down. So at the end here, the market stayed flat. Okay. So when the market goes negative, you don't ever go negative. You don't lose any money, but you don't make any money either. But if you would have been in this green line in the index strategy, you would have had $499,540 compared to $261,170 if you were in the market. So which line would you prefer to be in, the red line or the green line? Most people are preferring the green line. So we like to say zero is your hero using the index strategies. On the left side is a typical investment. You've got $100,000 in the first year, it earned 10%. So you're at $110,000 at the end of the first year. And in the second year, it earned 5%. So you're at 115,500. The third year, it earned 6%. You're at 122,000. But look what happens in the fourth year. The market corrected at minus 20%. So your money went from 122,000 down to about $98,000. And then the next 2 years were up 8%, 3%. And then in year 7, the market corrected again at minus 15%. So now you're down to $92,000. And then the next 3 years, you had a positive return of 7%, 8%, and 10%. So at the end of 10% or 10 years, you're at 117,809. So you started out with $100,000 and now you're at 117,809. That's an average return of 2.20% in the market. On the right side is the indexing strategy, and it works like this. You have $100,000. You made the first year, it made 10%, just like the S&P 500 did. So you're at 110,000. The next year it was plus 5%. And then the next year, year 3, you're at plus 6%. So you're at 122,430. But in year 4, you can see over here, the market went down 20%. So you don't lose 20%, you stay at 0%. So you had $122,430 and you stay at $122,430. And in the next year, year 5, the market was up 8%, up 3%. And then you had another correction, it was minus 15%. So you're at 0. 0 is your hero. So you're locked in at the 136, 190. So anytime your account hits a high, a new high, it locks that in. It's like a ratchet. And then the market was up 7%, up 8, up 10. And so at the end of 10 years, the index account had $173,118. Okay. So the average return was 5.70% if you use the green line or the indexing account. So what does that mean? That means that you have $173,118. That's 47% more than if you were in the market at 117,809. That's pretty substantial. Let's talk about taxes. I like to use the 30-year mortgage analogy. Let's say you went to your bank and you wanted to get a loan. You wanted to buy a house for $500,000 and you asked the loan officer for a 30-year loan for that. And the loan officer said, sure, no problem. But here are the bank's conditions. The bank is not going to share with you what the interest rate is until at the end of the 30-year loan. And then that rate is whatever they determine at that time, and it's going to be charged to you retroactively back to year 1. Now, is that a loan that you'd want to take? Would you sign that document? Well, probably not. Most of us wouldn't do that. Well, it's very similar to your IRA. If you have a traditional IRA or 401k plan at work, those plans are tax deferred. In other words, you're postponing the tax to the very end of when you want to use that account. Now, here are the IRS's conditions for those accounts. The IRS will tax your IRA or 401k at a tax rate that isn't determined until the day you retire. Okay, so it's the same situation. They're going to they're not going to even calculate what the tax is on your account until the day you pull the pin and you want to retire to take that money out as an income. But you don't know what that rate's going to be. So that does that sound like a good deal? Well, it's not really a good deal because you don't know what you're getting into. And the thing is, 90% of us in America are using an account like this for our retirement. Let's take a look at the history of tax rates. These are marginal income tax rates. In 1913, that's when uh, the Federal Reserve was started, and that's when they started taxing our income. And look what happened in 20 or 20 1920, 1921 actually, we had World War I, and the government had to pay for that war. So the tax rates had to go sky high to pay for World War I. And then after the war went down a little bit, we went into the Depression here. But guess what? We had World War II, and we had to pay for those for that war. And our tax rates, the top marginal tax rate back in 1944 was 94%. Can you imagine that? 94% was the top marginal tax rate. And then it went down, and then we had the Vietnam War, so we had to pay for that. And it started to come down into the 80s. It got really low in the 80s. And then we're here at 2018 and 2023. In 2023, the top marginal tax rate is 37%. So the average marginal tax rate is 57.3%. Okay. So relatively speaking, if we're at a 37% top rate, we're in a relatively low tax rate environment right now. And so there's a lot of room here where to reach the average, it could go as high as 50% very easily. Then we have the 2017 Trump tax cuts that automatically sunset in December of 2025, 2 years away from today. And that means that your tax cuts that you've been enjoying for the last few years are going to go back to what they were in 2016. So it automatically increases at midnight on December 31st, 2025. Now let's take a look at something called debt to GDP. Most people haven't heard about this, or they're not interested in what this is, but this is a really, really important thing to understand. But it's basically a leading indicator of tax increases. This is what the economists use to take a look to see if we're going to have an increase in taxes. Let's go over the definition of a couple of things. Definition of debt, you probably know what that is. That's basically the amount you owe, or the amount that the government owes. GDP is the gross domestic product. That's all the goods and services a country produces in a year. And the debt to GDP ratio is basically a measurement used to tell you if a country has the ability to repay the debt over time. Okay. And so it's just like your personal budget. You have the debt to income ratio. And if you want to go to buy a car and you want to get a car loan or a mortgage, you're going to go in there and they're going to look at your debt to income ratio. And they're going to look to see if your debt is close to your income, you're not going to be getting a loan. Okay. It's the same thing how the country works here. They track the debt to GDP, and you can see that in 1941 here, when World War II began, you can see, look at the spending, because we had to pay for that war, what they do is they have to increase taxes, income taxes, to pay for the war or any expenses that the government is spending. And you can see here that typically, the debt to GDP ratio at this time was 118%. Okay, so it went up to 118%, and they jacked taxes up here to 94% here, went down a little bit, but they have to keep this ratio here accurate. And typically you don't want this ratio to be over 100%. So basically if it's 100%, that means that your taxes are covering the debt. If it's over 100%, well, now the country's got a problem. Okay. Now, if we go down here over the years, you can see that they started lowering income taxes because the country's debt was paid down. But look what happened in 2020. It spiked up. Okay, our government spending spiked up, and we're currently at 130%. Okay, so our debt to GDP ratio in 2023 is 130%. So that's 30% higher than what the maximum is that they want us to be at. But look where our income tax rate is. The top income tax rate is at 37%. And look what they had to do back in 1941. They had to raise income taxes to help pay for the debt. But we're still way down here at 37%. So do you think there's a chance that they're going to raise our income taxes to help pay down this government spending? You better believe they're going to do that. It's just a matter of time. Now, a lot of things that happened, with COVID-19 in 2020, the government had $4.6 trillion in relief money, and basically they're just printing that money. And so they're bailing out, businesses, local governments, and households. They're writing checks to everybody. And you probably knew somebody who was laid off, and some of those people were collecting unemployment checks that were higher than when they were working. So there was an open checkbook during this time. It still is. And they just keep printing money, and they just keep doling it out. They dole it out to Ukraine and now Israel. And it's crazy. They were printing $120 billion a month to boost the economy and artificially propping up the stock market. So a lot of that money was going into the stock market to keep that going. And they're also pumping money into residential and commercial mortgage-backed securities to make the economy look better. And what do you think is going to happen when they stop slowing down the printing of that money, or they actually stop printing money? What's going to happen to the stock market and the housing market and the building market? They're going to collapse. That's what's going to happen. So you need to prepare for that. With this government spending that we're having right now, this is really a bad thing. And you have to be prepared for it in your financial plan. Let's take a look at government spending. This is the US debt clock. And if you want to look at it live, it's pretty cool because you go onto usdebtclock.org, and this thing is running in real time. You can see these numbers just flying by. This is the national debt at $33 trillion. Okay, and I made this slide, I think, about 2 weeks ago. We're already up to $33,666,000,000. And soon we're going to be up to $34 trillion. But what's happening here is we're collecting, if you can see this here, we're collecting tax revenue of $4.3 trillion, but we're spending here $6.1 trillion. So there's a difference of almost $2 trillion between what we're bringing in to what we're paying out. And then on this debt, we have to pay interest on our own debt, obviously, and they keep raising interest rates. So that's going to raise the cost on our debt. And we're up to 3.8, almost $4 trillion just in interest on our $33 trillion debt. So we're bringing in $4 trillion and we're paying almost $4 trillion in interest on our debt. You can only do that so long. In fact, in August, Fitch downgraded the U.S. Credit rating, the government credit rating, and Moody's just in November here, just about a week ago, they downgraded our credit rating for the second time in U.S. history. This has only happened because of the erosion in fiscal management. So Moody's rating went from stable to negative. And so what does that mean? Well, that means that we've got a major problem for the countries that want to buy our debt in the treasury bills and notes that people want to invest in. Those are not as secure as they were in the past. And basically what that does is it puts more pressure on Congress to fix the debt problem. Okay, so remember that chart where our debt was 130% debt to GDP ratio. So that puts pressure on Congress to fix the problem. And how are they going to fix the problem? They're going to raise income taxes. That's what they're going to do. In fact, former Comptroller General David Walker a few years ago said we're heading to a future where we'll have to cut federal spending by 60% or double the federal income taxes. Okay, so he's doing seminars all across the country telling companies and institutions that you need to prepare for this because he doesn't think that Congress is going to reduce spending by 60%. And do you think that's going to happen? Do you think they're going to cut their spending habits? Probably not. They're going to probably go this route, double federal income taxes. Now, how does that work with your 401k or traditional IRA? Let's say that you're in a 30% tax bracket today and your 401k plan is worth $1 million and you want to retire. Well, Uncle Sam's portion of that is 30%. That's $300,000. Your portion is $700,000. Okay. Now, if they raise that income tax rate to 50% on $1 million, guess what? Uncle Sam's portion is $500,000 and your portion is $500,000. So Uncle Sam is a 50-50 partner with you on your retirement account because you deferred the taxes on it. Well, how does that relate to taking income off your retirement account? Let's say you could take an income rate of 4% per year. Okay. That means that would spin off $40,000 a year income, but you have to pay tax on that. So if you're in a 30% tax bracket, that's a $12,000 tax. And that means that you're going to net only 28% on this account. If they raise the income tax rate to 50%, you're going to pay a tax of 20%. So you're only going to net $20,000. And that's not even talking about any state tax that you might have to pay if you live in a state where they have state income tax, especially if you live in New York, where it's, I think, 17%, and in California, it's 18% on top of the 50%. You know, what's the use? It's all going to the government. So, how is your plan doing so far? Have you even taken a look at something like this? Has anybody told you that this is what's going to happen? And the other thing that is important to understand, are you going to even have $1 million in your retirement account when you retire? The average person at age 65 in America only has $265,000 in their retirement account when they retire. And so that's not going to work. So even if you had $2 million in your retirement account and you're in a 30% tax bracket, you know, you're looking at less than $60,000 a year in income, or over here, you know, you're looking at, you know, $40,000 a year. How are you going to survive on that? So you have to take a close look at your retirement account. It's very important that you start looking at these numbers, because the older that you get, the faster time flies. And all of a sudden, you know, you're going to be looking for a job at Walmart or Home Depot, and you're going to have to wait in line for that job. So what is the perfect retirement investment? Well, the perfect retirement investment looks like this. You don't want any risk. You want guarantees. You don't want penalties. You want liquidity, so you want to be able to get at the money when you need it. You want it to be protected from stock market losses. You want to be able to leverage that if you have an opportunity where you could leverage your account to get into that opportunity. You want the contributions to be tax deferred, or the accumulation to be tax deferred, but you want to be able to pull the money out tax free ultimately. You want to be able to use your account for collateral. You want your contributions to be tax deductible, and you want money to have access to money if you became disabled or chronically ill. And ultimately at the end, you want to pass the rest of your money on tax-free to your beneficiaries, to your family. Well, what does the IRA or 401k plan look like? It only has 2 green boxes, the rest are red. So the only thing that the IRA or 401k has that's good is it's tax deferred, which really isn't a good thing ultimately, because you have to pay the tax at the end. And then your contributions are tax deductible. And that's only if you're in a 401k plan at work. You know, if you have you're funding a traditional IRA, a lot of the times those deductions are not tax deductible anymore. Well, what about all the other types of investments that are out there? Look at all of these here. Most of the boxes are red. There's only 1 or 2 of them where there's maybe 3 green boxes. Nobody's close to having all of these boxes green of what people want. So what is the best type of retirement plan out there? Well, believe it or not, it's life insurance. It's a maximum funded tax advantage life insurance plan. It's the #1 tax minimization retirement vehicle, but it has to be properly structured. This is the key here. This is not your grandfather's life insurance plan. This is a plan that's made to be a retirement plan so that you could take advantages of the tax code, the IRS tax code, that life insurance has that other financial instruments do not have. You can see that it checks all of the green boxes here except tax deductible payments. So in other words, your premium and the money that you're putting in here is not tax deductible. Although we do get around that sometimes. If you own a business, we can do a Section 162 bonus plan and bonus you those premiums, and then they're tax deductible. So anyway, this is how what that's all about. And what we do is we use a index universal life, an IUL, that gives you a tax-free death benefit. And the nice thing about these newer plans here is the IRS allows you to prepay the death benefit if you have a critical illness or chronic illness or terminal illness. Okay. And a good example of how this works, and this is going back at least 20 years now. I had a client that needed a liver transplant, and it would cost them $250,000 to just to get on to the transplant list, and he didn't have the money. But we set him up with one of these plans here, and he was able to pull $250,000 from his death benefit to get on the liver transplant list. So, and it literally saved his life. He'd had the transplant, and he had it was successful, and so the policy that we set up for him was literally saved his life. And then ultimately, at the end, you want to take out tax-free loans and withdrawals that are lifetime. Well, what about the indexing part of this? We use indexes. That's that green line that you saw. How does that work in these types of plans here? Well, you have a lot of choices. It's sort of like a mutual fund where you have different choices to get into, and you can mix and match. You can do 50% here, 50% there, or 100% there. They do have a fixed interest account. It's like a 1-year CD. The current rate is at 5.30%. So this is nice when interest rates go up. The interest rate on this will go up also. There's another one called the Trigger Index. They use the S&P 500. And if the S&P 500 does anything over 0%, if it did a 0.5%, the company's going to pay you 8.25% for that year in this index. Then you come down here with the standard S&P 500 index. This one has a cap of 12.5% per year. So that means that if the S&P 500 does 20%, you're only going to get 12.5%. Okay, so it's capped at 12.5%. We use these other ones here, like the Bloomberg US Dynamic and the PIMCO Tactical Balance. And this works like this. They don't have caps. So it's whatever the index does, you get 100% of that. You actually get, like on the Bloomberg index, right now they're giving you 190% of whatever the index does. So if the index did 10% for the year, they're going to give you 9% return for the year in this account. The PIMCO does, if it's at 185% participation rate. So if the index does 10%, you're going to get 18.5%. Okay, those are pretty nice returns as long as the index is growing properly. So we teach people how to be your own bank, and what that means is we set your maximum funded insurance contract up so that these contracts, you have access to the cash value, you have access to the money that's in there. It's about 90% of the money. You need 10% in there to satisfy the death benefit if you died. Okay, but you get access to about 90%. And you can use that money for anything you like. And we teach people to loan the money out to yourself. You be the bank instead of going down to Ford Motor Credit and taking out a loan for a car. You could actually loan it out to yourself to buy a car, and then pay yourself back, and pay yourself back with interest, because this is ultimately your retirement plan. You can pay for things like college education, your kids or grandkids, home remodeling. I like to use this with real estate investors. This is an awesome plan for that. For those people, they want to flip a house. What they do is they loan out $60,000 from their own policy, and they go remodel a house, and then they sell a house for a profit and put the profits back into the policy here. And then they start all over and do it again on another property. But and then you have money, of course, for emergencies. If something happened, you got laid off or whatever, you can pull money out of here for supplemental income. But ultimately, you want to use this for tax-free retirement income. And when you retire, you're just going to be taking loans and withdrawals out of here. And don't worry about this, the loan part of this. People get nervous when you talk about loans because the loan is paid off from your death benefit when you die. Okay, so it doesn't matter. It's structured properly so that you have enough money in here to not only pay off all the loans at retirement, but you have a nice big death benefit to pass on tax-free to your family. So it's a pretty awesome plan. Well, what about protecting your savings from hyperinflation and devaluation of the US dollar? And I don't know if you're paying attention to this or not, but right now we are in hyperinflation and the US dollar is deflating at record speed. And you need to prepare for that also. Here's inflation from 2000 to 2023. Going out to eat is up 88%. Your heating bills are up 35%. Groceries are up 343%. College tuition up 69%. Water and sewer up 185%. Car insurance up 56%. And medical care up 111%. And I'm sure you're all feeling that when you go to the grocery store or you're paying your medical bills. But the question I have is, why is the government telling us that we're at a 3.7% inflation rate? Did you know that? They're saying that we're at 3.7%. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said on Thursday, November 9th, just 2 weeks ago, that the current inflation rate was 3.7%. Well, the reason that they got it to be at 3.7% is because they took out the cost of food, the cost of energy and fuel costs, and medical care costs. That's why those are the three biggest costs that we have in our economy. And once you remove those, well, yeah, then you can get it down to 3.7%. And it sounds real good in the news that our economy is booming and we're only at a 3.7% inflation rate. So what about the US dollar? The US dollar has lost about 97% of its purchasing power since the Federal Reserve was created in 1913. Okay. And these are some of the things that happened back in 1944, right after when World War II was ending here. The United States and all of their allies met in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to help figure out how they can stabilize the economies of all the countries. And because the United States had the strongest currency, the dollar, and had the best economy at that time, okay, they agreed, all of the countries agreed that they were going to use the US dollar to back up their currency, each country's currency, and the US dollar was being backed up by gold, dollar for dollar, 100%. Okay, it was called the gold standard. And if you remember learning in grade school, there was a little place in Tennessee called Fort Knox, and that's where they they stored the gold. Okay, and that was where they stored all the gold to back up the US dollar. But what happened between 1944 and 1971 was the United States started to build the interstate and build bridges and infrastructure. And it cost a lot of money to do that. And so they were spending more money than what they had backed up by gold. And the Allied company or countries did not like that. So they started giving the dollar back to the United States, and they wanted to remove themselves from the dollar. And so a number of countries did that. And during the Nixon administration, they put a stop on that immediately, because what these countries wanted, they wanted to return the dollar back to the United States. And then the United States had to give them their gold back, okay, that backed up their currency. Well, that didn't work out very well for the United States. So Nixon created he ended the Bretton Woods Agreement and took the US currency off the gold standard. Okay. And now to this day, we are on the fiat currency system. You've probably heard of that word. Fiat is basically a currency that's not backed up by anything. It's just paper money. And that's why they're allowed to print money. The US Treasury is allowed to print as much money as they want. And it's because it's not backed up by anything. When it was on the gold standard, they couldn't print that much money. And now we come to 2020, and in 2021, the Biden administration approved printing 4 times the standard amount of the US dollar. And that brought our reserve, the value of the dollar, down to 3 cents on the dollar. So we went from $1 in 1913 down to 3 cents on the dollar. That's what the currency is worth today. And because of all the government spending that we're having right now, you're going to see a collapse, 100% collapse of the US dollar. And it's happening right now as we speak. And you need to prepare yourselves for this, because you have to protect your dollar, because it's not going to be worth anything. Well, how can we do that? Well, some of these countries here, this is called BRICS. I don't know if you've ever heard of BRICS, BRICS. That's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They got together, and this is actually in August of 2023. They all agreed that they're pulling all of their currency off the US dollar. And there's 120 other countries waiting in line to get onto the bandwagon with this. So as soon as all of these countries and 120 more, there's going to be more and more, they're pulling their money off of the US dollar, which drives the US dollar value down even further. And these countries want to have their own currency now backed up by gold, 100% backed up by gold, but they're going to do it together. And so they do have a plan now to dump the US dollar. And so what does that mean to us? Well, personally, what it means is that you seriously have to be looking at now investing some of your assets into gold and silver. And buy a little bit of bullion, gold eagles and gold bars, because that's a hedge against inflation and a hedge against the loss of the US dollar. Because if you have and don't buy EFTs or certificates or anything like that. You need to have possession of the gold, of the precious metal. It's very important. And so what the problem is that gold now is at almost $2,000 an ounce, and a lot of people can't afford $2,000 an ounce. 1 ounce coin is $2,000. Okay, but a lot of people can afford silver. There's a huge opportunity in investing in silver right now. A 1 ounce, 1 ounces of silver right now is at about $30 an ounce. So that's very, very affordable. And the thing with silver is there's a limited supply of silver, and the price is going to start shooting up when most of the people out there realize that their paper money, their fiat money, is worthless. And then they're going to be looking for ways that they can actually have money, and they're going to be buying silver. But the other thing is in manufacturing, because silver is the most consumed commodity after oil, and there's no substitute for it. Silver is being used to manufacture cell phones, cameras, computers, automotive parts, computer chips. One of the biggest manufacturing areas are solar panels right now. They take a lot of silver. Missiles and rockets. Um, missiles take about 3.5 pounds of silver per each missile, and once the missile blows up, well, the silver is gone. Okay, so the supply is depleting. Rockets, I mean, SpaceX. I live in Florida, and they're firing off three rockets a month through Skylink. So they're using silver up like crazy. And the thing is, once the silver is used up, it can't be replaced. So if you have a stockpile of silver sitting in your vault, okay, the price of that could go from $30 an ounce to easily $500 an ounce in a very, very short time or higher. I mean, gold was, at $400 an ounce just a few years ago, and now it's $2,000 an ounce. So this could be, not only is this a hedge against inflation, but it's a fantastic investment. So silver, how does silver work as far against inflation? Well, in 1965, if you had 25 ounces of silver, you could buy a car for $2,500. So 1 ounce bought a car for 2,500 ounces. In 2021, if you had that same 2,500 ounces of silver, you could have bought two Mustangs at $67,000. And on the gold side, in the year 2000, if 626 ounces of gold would buy one house worth $169,000. And in 2021, that same 626 ounces was worth $1.2 million, which could have bought 3 houses at $169,000. So you can see it's just automatically a great hedge against inflation. The other nice thing about precious metals is if you buy bullion, which is gold and silver bars, or the coins, the silver eagles or the gold eagles, those are exempt products from income tax. These metal companies are not required by law to send you a 1099-B if you made a profit on your gold or silver. So this is an awesome thing to have in your investment portfolio. So basically, gold and silver is called sound money. Okay, that's what it is. It's sound money. It's solid money. You have possession of that gold or silver. Governments and financial institutions are buying it up. They're the largest holders of gold and silver in the world today, and they're going to keep buying more. And so what we do is people, if they want to add gold and silver to their investment portfolio, is we set them up with their own private sound money wallet. And so they get their own personal online website, and they can easily go in there and buy and sell silver and gold at discounted prices. And then they can turn around when they need money and sell it, and then transfers the money directly to their personal bank account and turns it back into cash, fiat money. But if you need money, then so you have to sell silver and gold, and then you're able to spend it in cash. So it's very, very easy to do once you're set up. So the next step here is take a couple minutes to set up a discovery call meeting with me. Scan this QR code here. This is my calendar, and you'll get on my calendar for a 30-minute discovery call meeting. And I'll do a personal review of your current plan. I'll show you how to protect your retirement plan from market losses, replace your income to your family in the event of premature death, show you how you can have access to money in the event of chronic illness or long-term care, show you how you can have access to funds in the event of an emergency or investment opportunity, and receive ultimately lifetime tax-free income. And that can potentially increase your net retirement income 40 to 50%. And then of course, we can easily add some gold or silver to your portfolio so you have a nice rounded portfolio. And then we'll give you your own personal wealth report. That's kind of nice. So if this is something that is resonating with you and you're interested in any of these strategies here, yeah, scan my QR code and get on my calendar, and we'll talk. And I hope you enjoyed this little presentation, and I hope to talk to you soon. So thanks for visiting.